The 20th century saw humanity take a great many strides forward. We took flight, touched the top of the world, and saw the bottom of the sea. We were explorers, experimenters, and engineers. We didn't just question the impossible, we challenged it and defied it. The greatest accomplishment of the 20th century was perhaps the United Nations, rising from the ashes of a world devastated by war. The United Nations is symbolic of humanity's limitless future and of greater things to come. The UN is a place where mankind can come together as equals, and no one gets left behind. This was perhaps never truer than in 1992 when the United Nations summoned leaders from across the globe for the unprecedented Earth Summit. Here, citizens of this world, represented by their leaders, stood up together and announced, "We have a responsibility not only to each other, but to our children, to protect and safeguard this planet which has given us everything." From this historic event emerged the term biological diversity, which is the intertwining connection we share with all other life on Earth, from the Sahara Desert to the Amazonian rainforest. It represents our diversity in genetics, species, and ecosystems, and how we are all part of a much bigger picture. The Convention on Biological Diversity Treaty, better known as the CBD Treaty, was signed and ratified by the 176 of the existing 177 UN members following the Earth Summit. It established international guidelines for how humanity together can offer our children the same Earth our parents gave us. Through human innovation, we developed the technology to produce and harvest food that is more nutritious and bountiful. This is possible through a process called biotechnology and is perhaps one of humanity's greatest accomplishments thus far. We do this by selecting the best seeds and species or even modifying their genetics to make them more suitable to our growing demands. The ethical debate of this practice has sparked great controversy over the years, and despite individual views on the subject, remains a very real part of our world, requiring serious consideration and responsibility by everyone. That is why in 2000 the United Nations added to the CBD Treaty the Cartagena Protocol. The objective of the protocol was to ensure that GMOs are handled and used in a responsible manner, guaranteeing that the introduction of a supercrop would not have a devastating effect on its new ecosystem. Furthermore, establishing that people have a right to know what foods have been modified and what actions their government takes in regulating and informing their citizens of the research, development, and implementation of genetically modified organisms. Every day, technology continues to develop, which has allowed our understanding of biodiversity to grow as well. This led to the discovery that the top 20% of the world is consuming 80% of the world's resources, not to mention almost exclusively developing all biotechnology, which is fine until you realize that these same countries are the least biologically diverse countries across the globe, meaning that they regularly must travel into other countries to collect samples, sometimes harvesting entire crops to further their research. This has led to the unofficial terms users and suppliers. The practice is exploitative because breakthroughs and developments by user countries are not shared with others, including the countries that supplied all the environmental resources. And so, in 2010, the United Nations confronted this gross injustice and introduced the Nagoya Protocol, which required countries to share developments with those that supplied the resources. Another breakthrough that the Nagoya Protocol offered was a mechanism that allowed the supplying countries an ability to bring legal action against a country that fails to share biotechnological developments using their resources. It is unquestionable that since 1992, the United Nations has made more progress in the fields of biodiversity, biotechnology, and equitable sharing than the last 200 years combined. But there's still a lot of work to be done. Most importantly, the sole nation who's failed to ratify the original CBD treaty was the United States, who's also the largest consumer of resources globally, despite only having a population of 330 million. The United States is home to the top biological research facilities in the world, but because Americans refuse to ratify the CBD treaty, companies under their sovereignty have no obligation to disclose the use of GMOs in their products or are required to share any advancements with the supplying countries. Today, Americans look much less like world leaders and more like narcissistic nationalists, expecting the world to suffer for their greed and gluttony. Imagine, though, if America were to join the rest of the world and together brought to bear all of our resources, do you think it would be enough, just enough, to leave the world a little better and a little brighter than once we found it?